the best thing ever, Mr. Dave's Pizza, for all of you that grew up in small town Texas, you know what I'm talking about. This was the only thing we ate was Mr. Dave's Pizza. Okay. Thank you guys so much for coming. I know time is the most valuable thing you have to give, and you chose to give that to me today. So I promise I will do my best to hopefully leave you with at least one thing that you can take from this presentation and positively impact somebody else's life. I mean, that's really the goal, is just one item, right? Hopefully you're gonna find more, but after this, please let me know if you liked it, you found something of value, or you would like to see me pivot in the conversation in any way, shape, or form. This is very collaborative, so do not hold back. Raise your hand, ask questions. We're going to go through a lot of different things at the end. We'll also look at a couple of different scenarios of how we structure the conversation and what we do when we pull this together. But a little bit about me in this room. I see a lot of very familiar faces, so please bear with me as I give a little bit of a plug to my beautiful wife and everything else that goes into making this operation run. The relationship part of this whole thing. She's much better at this than me. I just would rather get here talking and doing that kind of stuff. But we have been very blessed. We've been married for 27 years and actually been in the business for 27 years. We got married in December of 1996, and I got into business in September of 96. And then she joined in like March of 97. So it's been a long, fun ride. We have two amazing daughters. One is actually on a flight right now to Hawaii, going to play beach volleyball with her team, Louisville Marymount University out of LA. She's going to go play Stanford, USC, UCLA, and another one in Hawaii is going to be there, right? So it's going to be a really awesome time. And we have our youngest who is about to graduate high school, and she's accepted into Macomb School of Business at the University of Texas, and she's also going to play beach volleyball there. So we have no idea how all this happened. It was just by the grace of God, everything that they've done, and obviously Jennifer's upbringing, because it wasn't me. I may have been a sports side of it and everything, yeah. but no.
He's being really nice right now. That's not what he says at home.
As Linda in the front row here pointed out, boxer. She asked me, do I box or do I have a dog boxer? And the truth is, I, in my younger ages, did a lot of kickboxing. So boxing a little bit, but it's transitioned really into having 4 boxers. So 3 of them are now gone. We have 1 left. So we have a female boxer, about 50 pounds, 8 years old, and I think she still thinks she's 2. So that's a little bit about us. That's just a little bit about our operation. We'll go into more detail about stuff like that, but just more personal type things. So let's kind of get right into it. I don't know how you guys felt, but the last several years, we've been very blessed. We've been running down it. I mean, it's actually been pretty easy to catch a buyer, put them into a home, and close the deal, right? I mean, when interest rates are doing this, all we're doing is picking up the phone and making calls, right? Or picking up the phone and answering the call and saying, hey, you're looking to purchase a house, yeah, we can get you into a 3, 4, 5% interest rate, everything's gonna be awesome, payments gonna be super low, they're gonna be able to afford more. Refinancing, oh my gosh. Now granted, the hard part for us was we had like 180% more people jump in the industry. Now we're 60-something% have left the industry, right? So we're only left with 40% of loan officers, which is great. Same thing probably happened on real estate. But in the mortgage world, all we did was just pick up the phone if we're going to refinance, and somebody says, hey, how long? We'd ask them, how long are you going to keep the house? 7 years, great. Makes sense. What's your current rate? 7%. Awesome. I get you 5. Perfect. All right, let's do the deal. You skip a payment or 2, and then we'll close your loan. That's like how people made a living, right, in the mortgage world. We have 61% of all mortgages that are under 4%. So you got 23% below 3 and 38% below 3 and 4. Okay, so we had an awesome several years, but what do? We put ourselves in a pretty big challenge. Right now, we have all these people that are in lower interest rate situations and loans, and they own these homes, which is great, but it also becomes a challenge when we're trying to put more deals together. How do we overcome certain types of objections? And the reason I like doing this, and the reason why I want to put this presentation together and start talking more to people about this, is just the understanding of what we have to do together as a team. Okay, it's third-party validations, it's a lot of communication, so as you're talking to a client, they want to hear from you, absolutely, but when you refer them to a third party, your partner, your strategic mortgage partner, how are they communicating with them? Do they understand the numbers? Are they really communicating with them in a way that educates them to a certain point that moves them forward in their decision-making process? That's the part of the conversation that we need to have, right? It's not about rate. Interest rate's the distraction. The market is the reality, right? Market is what we have to focus on. Interest rate's always the distraction. And then we have this other thing called the media. The media is really good for doom and gloom, right? I mean, it really is. I mean, that's what they focus on. They focus on sensational titles. Oh, it's going to be worse than 2008. Really? Okay, but you know what? It gets clicks. They price high, so you get the same thing. There's big ideas with very little substance that goes behind it, and they typically give you perspective, but without really understanding the stats, and does it really relate to the current market, like foreclosures or delinquencies. But the reality is, when you put charts together and you show people this, then you begin building a lot higher level of credibility. And so when I go through this presentation, guys, and I can send you all this kind of stuff, so don't worry, we'll send out emails. If you guys want presentations, I'll give it to you. If you even want the stuff that I send to clients, because when I'm on a phone call with a client, it's either going to be a video call or it's going to be a phone call. And we're having conversations, and I know this client is on the fence about making a decision. I'm giving them numbers and I'm giving them stats, but more importantly, I'm also, from a third-party perspective, I'm going to either show them if it's a video call, or I'm going to text them the backup stats, the charts, the data that I'm pulling this from, because now I'm citing an expert, a credible expert that's showing me that I know exactly what I'm saying, and that's providing more value to them, because they're like, oh yeah, this makes perfect sense. I see that data now, right? A lot of us are visual learners, so they can hear it, understand it, but when they see it, it backs up my comments. It is all about the clicks, and we're creating an emotional response, but at the end of the day, I do believe, while we do get information as a society in general, especially in the whole life side, we do thirst for knowledge. We need to make sure our presentations, our conversations, everything that we do is centered around how can we make them more knowledgeable buyers or sellers, right? And if all we're bringing is emotion to the conversation, we've already lost, right? It's data and how we can make them more knowledgeable. So focus on the market, the interest rates and distractions. So that's what we talk about. Know your numbers. So if you're going to have conversations with any of your clients about whether they should buy now or wait, whether they should wait for interest rates to go down, different things like that. You need to know the numbers and know what that recommendation is to that decision. How does that decision impact their short and long-term goals with their home purchase or home sale? Okay. Now, and thought leaders. Okay, so this is really getting into the next part of this is it's about a conversation. So when I go through it, and what I'm showing you is basically leading up to my actual conversations with clients, and you'll get better at knowing the scripts and how to flow and all that kind of stuff. But it is not you just talking. The more we talk, the less we sell. So you have to know what are going to be the pain points and how to uncover the certain types of needs that the client has by lobbing up a softball and letting them start talking about everything that they need, why they won't do this or why they will do it. And I think that's the most important part is really changing this to, great talking points, but really bringing out the conversation, whether it's over the phone or it's in person. And right now we are about to enter, or we are entering, right, the busiest season, right? So we have all these buyers that are going to want to be able to move before the end of summer, right? School and all that kind of stuff. And we have obviously everything that's happening with the election and interest rates. So all of that's going to bring opportunities for us to sharpen our skills, to have more conversations, and then hopefully to be able to get more listings, because we'll talk about that in a little bit, because that is also one of our biggest challenges. So these are the things that we already understand, right? So we're going to go into a conversation. I would think every single one of you, you have had conversations with people, you've ran into one of these three. Is that correct? One of these three by show of hands, or all three?
All three.
All three, right? I'm going to wait until home prices go down. Great. I'm going to wait until rates go down. Awesome. Why would I give up my low rate? Those are the three. If you're not, I mean, when you're dealing with it, we're also seeing it from the lending side. And so, how do we overcome these objections? And I also am going to be soliciting feedback from you guys on how you guys are overcoming it. But I want to give you some things that I use in overcoming each one of these 3 points. Okay. But before we get into that, here are things that we already know. Okay, so if you're getting into the objections, you better know certain facts before you ever start opening your mouth and talking. We know the average U.S. homeowner has $274,000 in home equity. Okay, that's pretty important. We also know the average American has $103,358 in consumer debt. Credit card debt's on the rise. The average interest rate since from 1971 to 2024 is 7.74%. And the average per year national appreciation in Collin County is 7.66 over the last 5 years and 7.32 over the last 10 years. Right? I mean, you need to know that data before you can ever start trying to overcome any of these objections. So then I would show them a forecasted historical appreciation, just so they have those numbers there available. So I would text that to them, just as a third-party validation if we're having a conversation. So if we look at it, I'm going to wait. Let's address the first one. I'm going to wait until home prices go down. Easy. You know, Case-Shiller Home Price Index gave us a report that said, you know, they looked at this, all these studies, all this stuff in the last 81 years. In the last 81 years, 73 years, home prices went up. 7 years they went down, and 1 year it was pretty much neutral. Okay, that's undisputed data. Okay, over the last 81 years, home value's gone up 73 years. So if we look at this box, it'll show you, right? So I send that to them. I'm like, hey guys, take a look at this, right? This is the actual data that shows this to you. And you'll see the red, 90 and 91, what was that? S&L crisis, right? We're right in the end of that S&L crisis. 2007 to 2011, what was that? Mortgage meltdown, right? The mortgage meltdown. But when you start looking at all this, look at all this green, positive home values, and when you see the red, what happens after the red?
That's a big jump.
Always positive home values, right? We recover very well. So that's the things that we talk about. Look, real estate's a long-term perspective. If you're really looking at it, and real estate provides a 90% win rate. When you really look at the 73 over the 81, you're at a 90% win rate. Okay, it's better than most asset classes.
Can you go back to that slide? Can we say to our client when we're adopting
that one?
Yeah, based on the fact that say 6%, 5% is the kind of average. I'm not counting the 11%. 2010. Can I say to my client, hey, normally every year your house will appraise between 6 to 10% on equity? Can I say that?
Your house will value.
Equity will increase 6 to 10%.
So I mean that's why we'll use historical values to predict the future. I mean we look at it in Collin County at 7.66 over the last 5 years. Now you're going to go back the last three years or so, then it's going to be like 27%, right? And then it goes up. So it's just really better to say on average, but I'm more comfortable in that 7 to 8% range on average, while 10% is definitely reasonable given the last several years. I wouldn't say that that's something you would bank on, just much like investments, right? You can say, oh yeah, I can get, absolutely, you can average 10%. You can on your investments, but it becomes a little bit more challenging in debt markets.
And you can pull up those stats in the MLS for your area, and that way you know for your particular area.
Can we get a copy of that slide?
Yeah, so, who said that? Ask that? Oh, yeah. So, we'll email you out if you want copies of all this stuff. I mean, I'll definitely send you guys all your slides for all this, the whole presentation. Okay, so, oops, going the wrong way. Yeah, okay, so, obviously 90% win rate. And then coming out of these types of economic times, right, the Great Depression, the S&L crisis, home prices rebound, they rebound very well, as you saw by the charts, right? Coming out of the reds, the greens immediately show up in the following years. And so that just gives the buyer confidence that they're making a good decision when they look at value, because they're not really looking at it saying, why should I, rates are going to, our home value is going to come down. It's just not going to happen. And we'll talk about that in a second. Yes, the home value, it was minor, right? We saw the S&L crisis, which is, coming out of that in 90, 91, it ended in 93. 90, 91, you had a very small, minor depreciation. Very minor. 2007, 2011, that's all the mortgage credit market, right? That was government saying, hey, we want more people in homes. Lenders are saying, yeah, we do too. How do we make this work? You had Wall Street that understood it. Anybody watch Big Short?
Yeah.
Watch Big Short. Best movie about mortgages. I've been doing it. I've lived it. It was right there, just like it. So you have all these credit swaps being made and all this stuff, and we're trying to move money around, and we just started lowering our credit quality. We lowered our credit quality. We lowered our underwriting guidelines. We lowered our down payment requirements. But yes, more people got into homes. But when you don't have a lot of money in the game and you have lower credit, you tend to walk away if things change, right? And that's what ultimately happened, right? We saw it bigger in Michigan, bigger in Florida, bigger in California, those kind of things. We kind of got a little bit sheltered here in Texas from that. But we're in a different market today. We don't have that type of credit quality. Average credit score, average 765. Now, the bigger piece is we have a lot more stringent underwriting guidelines when it comes to qualifications. Dodd-Frank was introduced. We got the ATR, ability to repay laws that were put in place. So these 10% down fast and easy loans, you put 10% down, you got a 620 credit score, man, you're good to go, no income, no verifications on job, nothing like that, man. You just throw your 10% down, basically state your income if you want to. Or even no doc loans, or we don't even verify anything. All that stuff is gone, and they've come in and say, which is fine. They come in and say, look, we need to be responsible. We need to make sure that we're putting people into good debt, right? I think that's a reasonable request. While a lot of other things are somewhat unreasonable that we get forced to do with regards to requirements and compliance, that one is a pretty good requirement. So that puts a healthier market in front of us. And we're not going to see the type of market that we saw in 2007, 8, 9, 10, and 11, okay? So what we see here is, with a significant housing shortage, lower inflation, and mortgage rates moving down, we don't expect prices nationally to decrease during the fallout. Guys, you all know this. I think the biggest thing is, remember, wealth is not created by time in the market, it's created by time in the market. And I think that's the biggest piece and takeaway out of that slide is really helping the homeowner understand it's almost impossible to time any market. You're not going to just be able to buy a home today and hopefully, be able to sell it for $100,000 in a year, right? It just doesn't work that way. But the longer you keep the home, if you're looking at that asset class in a long-term perspective, it's a 90% win rate, and with a 7.66 appreciation, here's what that home's going to look like. And especially for those that are coming from an area where they don't own, they're already renting, then you really talk about the difference between the appreciation that they pick up and the natural loan pay down, which that delta becomes their net worth. right? And we'll talk about that in a second. I'm going to wait until rates go down. Okay? Another one. So a lot of times, and I do, and my wife laughs at me, but she'll have me on conversations. I use feel, felt, found a lot. I don't know if any of you guys have ever heard of feel, felt, found type scripting. But it would go something like this. Ellen, I understand how you feel, man. Many people that I talked to actually felt the same way. But what they found is when we really started researching the data and looking at it, they actually made the decision on their own, independently, to buy a home today because the numbers told them they should. So let's go ahead and move forward in that conversation. Let's talk about that. Right? You got to get very comfortable with just having those types of deals. And it's not about negotiating. Right? I'm not negotiating with you. I'm sitting here, I'm saying, so, man, I understand how you feel, buddy. A lot of people talk, Gary, even over here felt the same way. But what we found was when we started actually looking at numbers, you're talking to people. You're having a conversation and bringing forth information. You know what's about to happen. You're about to bring forth knowledge that they're thirsty for to make the right decision. And if that decision, truly, this is what you have to believe, if that decision is for him to wait, then you did your job. You exactly did what you were supposed to do because you provided him the data for him to make a positive decision. But the reality is, if he's really in that moment to buy, the data is going to be telling him there's no question at all. You buy today. Okay? So, Okay, then I asked you 2 questions. What data have you been looking at, right? So I want to know, hey, dude, this is awesome, man. Educate me a little bit as well. What data have you been looking at that's telling you that rates are going to come down?
Their friends.
Their friends. Oh, the parents. Inflation. Yeah. I love the news. Inflation's still up.
Oh, it's going down.
It's going down. Right. But how does that work?
Well, the Fed is controlling interest rates based on inflation right now.
And interest rates are going to go down in March, right?
Probably not, because inflation tweaked up just less.
Right. So it's like just having and I'm just I know what I'm thinking with you, but it's like, okay, yeah, absolutely. I certainly hear that. A lot of people are on that fence about waiting for rates to go down, and I think you're probably on the right track because again, it's not going to be argumentative. So you're like, yeah, you're probably on the right track, so those rates are going to come down. That's what every analyst is telling us. Now, probably not in March because the Fed Chair Jerome Powell said it's not going to happen based on where their inflation data is, and we're going to see that thing trending down to 2%. But the reality is, man, let's talk about this. What happens when interest rates go down? How's that going to change the market? What do you think? Huh?
Bloodbath.
Yeah, bloodbath, right? You start asking, what do you think's going to happen? And so we're kind of getting into the presentation, but that's kind of what we look at. And then I kind of go into the same thing. Yeah, I agree, man. I think interest rates are going to come down, but the reality is, when that happens, there's going to be a lot more people that are going to enter this home market. Just recently, U.S. News reported in the Bank of America survey that said 72.1 million. Now, this is your millennials, right? These are the people that are going to be purchasing a home over the next 2 years. They stated that there's going to be 72.1 million people entering this home buying market over the next 2 years. What's going to happen?
The competition. It's going to go up.
And I don't want to be the one that says that. I want to ask you, as the potential buyer, what do you think is going to happen with that? I don't know. What do you think? Because I already know the answer, and I'm about to show the data. But you want to get the feedback coming from them because that means they're bought into the conversation and they're really thinking that way. Yeah. So that's millennials, also known as Gen 5, 25 to 40 years old. I always learn something about putting these things together, right?
So Bob,
yes.
as you're going through that dialogue, I'm having clients that are savvy clients that say, for every 1 percentage point of rates going down, my monthly payment is 10% less. That's what they kind of rule of thumb, okay? So if I think the rates are going to go down a full point, say I'm waiting for rates to go to a full point,
Yeah.
so I can make my monthly payment 10% less.
Sure.
And then you start talking is that what is the forecast of increase of home prices this year? Nobody's talking about having a 10% increase that I'm hearing, okay? So they're still saying is that if I wait, I get 1% less, 10% less. Will the market increase by more than 10%? Because if it doesn't, some will say, I still want to stay, wait.
Well, so
How do you respond to that?
easy. It's data, right? And I'll show you because I built a scenario part because that's legit. I mean, we have those conversations. You're like, well, I am going to wait because my payments are going to be lower. I'm like, oh, really? Okay, well, let's just take a look. I'd love to see. I mean, let's get on this little tool here that I have and let's build it out. So let's take this loan at this rate and this loan at this. How does that work? Right? So it's showing them, and it's not me telling them, it's actually showing it, and numbers don't lie, people do. Right? The numbers are telling them the truth, right? So we'll show you that.
Hey Bob, I have a question. So realistically, you think if, for example, interest rates are 7% now, they go down to 5.5, how much is going to be increase in the home value and home prices?
So I go back to my data. I go back to the stats that we look at, and I just use natural appreciation, right? That if home values or interest rates go down, let's say 5.5%, which is where analysts are projecting it at the end of 2024, mid 2025, right? It's going to far outpace the 7.6% appreciation, right, over that 5-year period that we see, let's say in Collin County, just because of the demand. Right, less supply, more demand, interest rates are low, everybody's out there looking, now home prices are going to be 20 to 30%, right, over what the actual value is. So then we're going to get into a new season of what we just came out of. But I always use, and I tell them, look, I'm going to be very conservative, and I'm just going to use the forecasted and historical appreciation, or not forecasted, historical appreciation at that 7.6 number, because we all know if things change, you're going to get more equity out of that house, so you're going to pay more money, right? So then we kind of get into showing them that stuff, and so that's what I'll show you. Let's see if I can answer the questions in the next couple of slides, okay? Okay, so we talk about inventory, right? So currently, and currently 2.6 months of inventory. Now it could be a little bit different in different markets. National stats are 2.6 months of inventory. A normalized market, right? Normalized imbalance is 5 to 6 months. So you can see inventory. We have a buyer's market if it's over 6 months. If it's less than 5 months, we have a seller's market. So if we're at 2.6, so is that a buyer's market or a seller's market? That's a seller's market, right? Because we're trying to obviously get them into like economics 101 and teaching them a little bit of supply and demand and all that kind of stuff, right? But with kind of keeping it in context of our conversation. You guys remember, I do this on a call with clients a lot of times when they're really in that I'm hesitant, I'm not sure I want to buy. But it doesn't flow like a presentation. I mean, it's just a real combo. So you just have to have the data either up here, you got to know it, or you would have like the presentation deck or whatever, which kind of, oh, they said this, and we flip over to that presentation deck. But the reality is we're talking about it, and we see demand for housing is high, supply is low, home prices rise. Pretty simple, right? And that's why we've seen, the average home price in 1990 at $105,280 to $486,953 in December of 2003. That's the delta. And it is really tied a lot to supply and demand, because what's something that hasn't stopped happening in this area? Growth. We haven't stopped people from coming here.
300 people a day coming here.
Right.
9,000 a month.
Right. And so that's the biggest part of the validation behind the increase in home prices. And I don't think, I'm no expert, but I'll be honest with you, it's going to be hard to keep up with having enough homes available if 300 people continue to move in every day. So this is really good for us, the ones that are still left from all the other people that have got out of this business. It's really good news for us, but it's also going to make us have to be better and stronger at what we do and how we communicate and the knowledge that we bring so that we can properly educate these individuals. They're thirsting for it. We've got to provide the data.
Are these two slides for local for DFW or for national?
Bob, I think that's national. That's national. I'm 99% sure. I'll check it and I'll make sure when I send it out, I validate that stat. But I'm 99% sure that it's going to be national. Okay? So we talk about interest rate forecast, and we go into the 2024 forecast, right? Our analysts tell us, okay, you're going to be seeing rates mid-5s to low 6s. All right, that's a pretty real number. We were hoping for 4s, but after all this stuff, we just don't feel it, right? There's no way. Analysts are saying you're going to be in a 5.5% to 6% market going forward. Okay, and we feel like obviously as we get under 6, we get into that 5 figure, it opens up more opportunities, not only for buyers, but for people that own homes, because the trade out may be a little bit less hard for them, right? If they're trading out of the 4s to the 5s, that's not going to feel as bad from a payment scenario, right? Trading still out of the 2s and 3s, getting us closer, but it's going to be harder. Definitely those 4s, which is where the largest percentage of the people are, is going to make it a little bit easier to trade out of that. So let's talk about this, right? So we say, okay, on a $500,000 home, you're financing 95%. I'm just using these numbers. Financing 95%, $475,000. Your P&I payment, this is just P&I, 6.5%. Let's say that's what we get you today. 6.5% is $3,002.32. So they say, you know what? I'm going to wait a year because it's going to go down, and I'm going to drop my payment. So let's say you just said that. Okay, fine. Wait a year and a half. Rates drop to 5.5. Now you're going to buy that house. Same price. You're going to buy that house. Okay, no adjustments, but you're going to buy that house at $500,000 again. Your payment's $2,697 P&I, and you just saved yourself $305.32 a month. $3,600 over 12 months. $5,400 over 1.5 years. So that's what you're telling me. You're going to purchase that home at the same price, but because you're going to save $300 a month.
So most likely that house is still gonna be the same price.
Exactly.
But then I go into this, and like, but does that make sense that you're actually going to buy the home at the same price? The reality is, we've already talked about appreciation and going to be at 7.6%. That home at $500,000 is going to be $538,700 in 1 year. $559,159 in a year and a half. That is what the market's telling you. The data is undisputed. It tells you that's what you're going to have to buy the home for. Okay? That's if you get it without having to overpay. That's just the current market. Okay? But wait, the home is going to cost us more now? What do you mean I got to pay more for this house? Yeah, you're going to have to pay more for the house. So now you won't buy the home at the same terms. The $500,000 home you'll have to buy for either $538,700 or $559,159 with that appreciation rate. That means that payment on that $538,700 is now $2,905.75, or if you waited a year and a half, $3,016. So you're $3,016. So basically now you're net even to what your payment would be at 6.5. Okay, but if you did it, you lost the $59,159 in equity.
And the tax deductions.
Tax deduction, you start layering all that stuff in, but just like hardcore number I can give them right now, you're going to have to pay that $559 for the house. This is the reality of the payment, buying it right now, and your payment's the same, but you lost $59,000. So why don't we do the smarter play? Why don't we buy now at 6.5? And then refinance at 5. Wow, that's cost. Wow. Well, okay, fine. So the house is worth $559. You refinance in the remaining balance, plus you roll in the cost, right? To the refinance, your payment goes down to $2,562.15. Now you've saved $440 a month. Okay, you saved $440 a month from what you originally bought it at, and then but you retained the $59,000 in equity. Okay, so I show that to him in a nice green graphic chart. It's all colorful and it makes him smile and all that kind of fun stuff. But it's data, right? It's data. It's percentages. I'm the emoji. I'm the emoji. But it's just giving him that data. It's visual and all that kind of stuff. But it's like, okay, you can hear me, but do you see it? And if you see it, then you can't dispute it. Right? And again, this is for the buyer that really is in the mindset of help educate me. I need knowledge so I can make the best decision. you have other buyers that, you know, it's gonna be like talking to a brick wall and you're like, what pound sand, what am I doing? I'm not helping you, you're not open and you're not open to receiving, right? So that is, so Gary, to that point of what you were talking about, does that address?
Yeah. Can you go back a couple slides to the one where you're showing that 3,009 payment, the 3,002? So at 6.5%, what would be the rule of thumb in the first 10 years of monthly payments of the 3,000 that's directly going to equity?
Small percentage.
Is it $100, $200?
$300.
Small part. I'm just trying to get this. At $3,000, they are putting some money in equity. Okay. Is there a number that I can?
When I get to the next piece of this, I have just what you need. I'll run an amortization schedule so you can see. Okay, it's super easy. God, you're so detailed. I know, it's the data. I love it. Okay.
But you can plug these numbers into all of our clients and then
Yes.
explain.
Oh yeah, so like when I know I'm walking in, that's why it's important. So as you're handing off a client, like if we're working together and you're refer me a client, you know, you connect me with a client via text, and then on the back side of it, you shoot me a text or call me and say, hey Bob, this client really needs a little bit of direction. They're hesitant on buying because of this reason. And then I'm prepared to have that conversation right out of the gate to talk to them to make that conversation flow a little bit easier. Okay, so this is, why would I give up my lower rate? Okay, so this one is a little bit more difficult of a conversation, right? The other two are pretty undisputed. We know the value of the home is not going to go down. Surely, number one, supply and demand, but we have all the other data that supports why it's not going to go down. We know that it's better to purchase today and refinance later. The numbers show us and tell us that. But when you have a person that's at a 4% or 3.5% interest rate that already owns a home, this is where you got to get on the same side of the table quickly and uncover need, right? This is really understanding the seller and what's their reason for wanting to have a conversation with you? What are you trying to solve? Because this is where we all make money. If we can't solve problems or challenges for people, we don't deserve the money that we're going to be paid. So the challenge is what? And that's what we're trying to uncover. We understand that the average homeowner has $274,000 in equity. You probably already know how much equity they probably have or should have, right? Walking into the listing appointment or the conversation. If you have the data, right? You may not have it, but if you do, you should know that. And we already know what we told before, that the average consumer has $103,000 in consumer debt. Okay, so those are two good, important things to understand walking into a meeting. And we also know that the credit card debt is on the rise, right? So 1.13 trillion spread out of less in America, right, for all credit card debts coming up in 2023. So when we're sitting there talking to somebody, you're trying to find out when you're talking to them, are they in that same similar situation? You know, because you're going to have a conversation. You know, most people have that $274,000 in equity. Kind of give me an idea of what's your home value at this point. Or, hey, I looked up your house, I got the comps, I see your home value is going to be at, you know, this much. So you were actually above the normal of $274,000. Congratulations. But you know, one of the things we also found out when we're kind of doing research and I look at studies and I do a lot of, you know, detailed stuff is, you know, most people have about $103,000 of consumer debt. And a lot of people have a lot of credit card debt. And I'm not saying you're in that situation, but you know, here's what we do with to help people have more of a stress-free life, right? And really look at what's better, having where you're at today and being in that stress ball of paying the house, paying all the consumer debt, paying the credit cards, doing all this kind of stuff. Or, you know, honestly, you know, other people have found that it's better to just go ahead and take this opportunity to sell because home values have increased so much and then pay off the consumer debt and credit card debt, and then buy before interest rates start to fall, because then it's going to be harder and more difficult to purchase at that point. I mean, can you help me understand, Joshua? Are you in that same situation? Does that resonate something with you? And again, you're really trying to uncover some need at this point because you don't, unless you know the person, you don't really know why you're on the phone with them. And don't take it as a deal of where you're on the phone with them to sell their house at that point. You're trying to uncover a need that maybe can help them personally, right? Now you're being more of a personal coach, which I know we are personal coaches, we're babysitters, we're therapists, do all that kind of stuff, right? But that's the conversation. So help me understand where you guys are at, personally. And if some agents don't have that level of confidence to get into that type of conversation, that's fine. That's where you use somebody like myself or your partner to enter that conversation. Hey, I'd love to, I think it's, selling a home is something that's a very important decision and one that you should consider, but you know what? It's not right for everyone given the time. But, I'd like to have you talk to my strategic partner who does financing, does wealth management, all that kind of stuff, and I think it would be good for him to kind of explore some conversations with you around, is it a good time to sell based on your personal situation? Can I go ahead and make that connection? And that's the kind of call I would have with a client. Hey, I certainly understand, thanks for giving me a phone call. He's a great agent. We've been working together for years. Help me understand where you guys are personally, because selling a home, it's a big decision. We want to make sure that you have a place to go. Tell me about your consumer debt, your credit card debt. What does that look like? Right? I mean, I'm asking these questions because I want to make sure I'm making a really good recommendation. I'm coming at it from a financial standpoint, not a let me sell the house standpoint, right? And so maybe their guard comes down a little bit. But that's the kind of call, that's the kind of conversation you're going to have to be able to get to, so you don't have to, pivot that way out. But if you need the third party validation, that's what it's there for. Then I would also go into the HELOC situation. So some people are just like, look, I ain't selling. I'm at a 3% rate. I'm not selling this puppy. Great. You don't have to. But you know what? Why don't you take advantage of the equity that you got? Most people have $274,000 in equity. How much equity you got in the house? I got $450,000. Great. It's dead money. Money in your home is dead. It's not doing anything for you. Let's go do a HELOC and let's go buy some investment properties. What? Well, why do I want more investment properties? Well, here's your stat from Federal Reserve. U.S. net worth, no real estate, 778 is your net worth, 255. Look what happens when you own 2 more real estate properties. That's the average net worth of somebody that has 2 plus investment properties, $1,780,400. But I want to help create more wealth. Yes, we're going to help you manage debt, but at the same time, we want to help you create more wealth in your life, right? And a lot of times that wealth translates into a more stress-free life. How would that sound for you if we took your net worth from estimated $255,000 to $1,480,000? That'd be great. Okay, well, let me tell you how that works, right? So it's obviously talking points in all of this, and obviously the conversation could go a lot of different ways. And you have to be really comfortable with pivoting in that conversation. And while I would agree this one becomes the most difficult because they are sitting in such a really good position, you have to be really good at just asking the questions and getting them to communicate with you with regard to what their potential need is.
I've seen you have addressed the HELOC. What about reverse mortgages?
Yeah, I mean, you can definitely do a reverse mortgage on stuff like that. I mean, reverse mortgages, and they have, I guess, they do have some good that can come out of it if it's done correctly for all the right reasons, because you're getting that individual the cash that they want and getting paid for staying in their home, and then ultimately when those individuals pass and the loan goes back and the house is gone back to the lender. It would just have to be for the right reasons. I don't do a ton of reverses.
A reverse mortgage is really somebody who's wanted.
Yeah,
They're retired.
They're
not thinking of buying real estate investments with their money.
They're just trying their cash flow. They're looking at being able to stand
They
there.
don't care about their kids, what they get or what they don't get.
Because they won't get it.
Right.
Yeah.
What I struggle in the dialogue that you're talking about on the equity is that if I'm gonna go buy my first investment property, lenders will ask for a minimum of 25% down because they're not gonna live in the house. So I'm gonna get a 25% down. Well, you tell me if I'm wrong. 25% down.
Lender, your lender's me, and I don't ever require 25%. You can go as low as 15%.
If you buy an investment property and not live in it, as low as
15% down. Your rates are going to be higher, but you can do 15% down. The reality is most people will do 20 to 25. 25
is
becomes,
required 25.
no.
Oh.
So 15 is the lowest, higher rate. 20 is average. 25 is the lower rate.
Okay,
So it also depends on the type of loan that we're.
Okay, so if I put that 15% down as investment property, and where housing prices are today, they're not going to get positive or break-even cash flow in the beginning years or so, based on when they're buying a house, unless they're buying a house at a fixer-upper that they're going to have to put some money in. So they're basically going to have to buy an investment property, knowing that they're going to need cash to keep it afloat for the monthly payment for how many years as the equity's going up. So they have to have more money in their pocket to handle it, so they can get the rent to break even.
Yeah, I mean, you're going to want reserves.
Yeah.
So if you're going to tap into a home equity line of credit, what I would encourage people to do is look at it and say, look, 25% of the time, the house is going to either need repairs or it's not going to be leased. So you're going to need to be prepared for all those incidentals that may come about. So go ahead, if we're needing, whatever, $150,000 or $100,000 to make this happen, you're going to want to get a little bit more out of that equity line of credit to sustain, to your point, the things that may need to float you. But again, we're looking at real estate in that mindset as a long-term perspective. We know that it wins 90% of the time, so over that long-term period, they're going to end up with a much larger equity share than net worth. Okay, it's not really done for. We've had rental properties. We didn't do it for cash flow. It was like, all right, I'm gonna net this out. I'm gonna break even on everything, and then when you sell it, then you get to realize a nice little cash flow win, right? Not monthly cash flow. Yes, sir.
When you are the current funds that they will draw, will be at the current rate of interest?
So
Or the historical ones that they have originally got the home loans?
So that's a good point. Good question. So if, let's say they're in a house and they're at 3.5% on their existing loan. The beautiful thing about a HELOC is you're not touching your underlying loan. So their underlying loan stays at 3.5%, right? That's what that is. The HELOC is really the equity position that you're pulling out. So let's say you go get a home equity line of credit and it's $400,000, you're only going to draw down $100,000, then you're going to be paying an interest rate based off of the $100,000 that you're drawing down. Okay, not
separate at the current rate.
it's a separate loan, okay, and it'll be whatever the current market rate is for a HELOC at that time.
For
Correct.
100,000, if you go with your example, the 100,000 that is drawing, okay, as a HELOC, it will be at the current market rate, correct?
Yeah. So but you get a $400,000 open line of credit, but only your utilization rate will only be at the 100,000, and they're going to pay the market rate at the 100,000. Okay. So just talking points, like thinking through some of those types of things and what you would have to uncover.
So when you take a HELOC, you're not paying a capital gains until you sell the house.
So sell the house. Get them thinking. What else would get them thinking if they have a house at 3.5%?
Assumable.
Yeah, so I hear that a lot. Very rarely does assumable actually work or happen. But because it's like, okay, my house is worth $500,000 and I'm an assumable at $300,000. And you want to go in and assume that loan at $300,000, like, oh, this is going to be great, I'll do it. Well, who's gonna fund the $200,000? And mortgage companies really aren't looking to be in a second lien position on that loan, so it's almost impossible to find a second lien that's going to go behind that 3.5 at $200,000. So it's a matter of how you're going to fund the extra 200. It's not going to be a traditional mortgage route. It's going to have to be your own investments and things like that.
Are all conventional loans assumable?
No. You have FHA that's assumable. There's going to be some that are going to be assumable. There's going to be some VAs that are assumable, things like that. But there's qualifications on it.
Not exactly.
That's what I'm saying. I mean, it was great. I had some listening to market, assumable, and they were calling me, hey, Bob, how does this work? And how can we make sure that the seller gets their equity? I'm like, find somebody that has 200K in cash. I mean, because that's how that will happen. I'm like, oh, yeah, thought that was gonna be a lot easier.
That kind of plays into the person who will also say, well, why would I wanna sell a home when I have it paid off, for instance? Well, I'm like, well, but would you ever put, let's say your home's worth $500,000, just around, well, would you ever put $500,000 in the bank with 0 interest? Never. That's what you're doing right now with your home. So how can we come up with the strategy to use all the equity in your home, aka HELOC, et cetera, to be able to buy other additional investment properties?
So 100% agree with that. That is excellent, right? Because it's debt money in the home, and one of the things that we do, and so I also have a wealth management company, and my partner is much smarter than I am, Kelly. She's the managing director of all of our investment, our assets on that side. We would do the same thing. We would say, all right, let's let you talk to her and say, let's say you're going to have $500,000 windfall. Let's look at the tax implications from the $500,000, right, that you're selling the house for. What if we took $300,000 and we invested that over this period of time? What's that rate of return going to look like? How does that investment portfolio grow? And then you take the $200,000 and you make other investments, or you buy your primary and then you make another investment or two. From a diversified standpoint, what does that build your overall worth to by selling that one house? Because it becomes more of a strategy, because one size doesn't fit all in that. You got to say, look, you're going to have $500,000 if we sell this house. How do we best use that $500,000 to make you more wealthy, right? Manage debt, sure, but how do we make that? How do we allow you to become more wealthy in making that decision? And that's like, oh wow. So you want to get into luxury real estate, you want to talk about luxury, you want to talk about that kind of stuff. You got to have and know people that can help facilitate that kind of thing, because you're thinking like, you know what? Yeah, we can sell a house. Well, they don't want to look at you as a realtor. They want to look at me as a lender, right? That's not what we're there for. We're saying, okay, look, we want to properly manage your debt, but at the same time, while we're managing debt, we want to help you create more wealth. And creating more wealth may look like this: selling the home, taking a portion of that money and investing it. Let's look at what the long-term gains of that's going to look like and how that's going to increase your portfolio size. But at the same time, we use other funds to purchase a home or 2 or 3 out of that. And then let's see where that projects you over the next 10 to 15 years. By the way, what is your retirement goal? Like, what age do you want to retire? Do you have a cash flow in mind that you want to retire? Dude, I mean, now you've really changed the perspective and what they're seeing you as when you're communicating with them. Because those are things that we all ask ourselves, right? What's our retirement age? Mine's probably never. But what's your retirement? We're in the same industry, right? Never. But what's our retirement age, right? How much money do we want to make while we're doing that? I mean, it's the real conversations, and if we can ask them ourselves, then it's the same conversation as our clients asking, right? And then how do we bridge the gap with stuff like that? Okay, so I'm going to get into a couple of examples of things really quickly. How am I doing on time? What was my goal here? What time is it?
12:10.
Oh, I got another 2 hours. I'm good. Just kidding. So we went through those 3 examples. Is there anything that stood out? Anything that you that was an aha type moment that you're like, oh wow, I didn't even think of that, and that could help me? Is there anything like that, or was this just a complete bomb?
Yeah, when I get into those situations, can I steer the client to you?
No steering allowed, but you can absolutely do exactly what you always do, Gary. Hey, you know what? I got a great guy. Let me connect you via text. Yeah, do that. That'd be awesome. Steer.
Come on.
I'm just kidding. Appreciate that. Is that a softball?
Yeah.
Thank you. Anything?
My movement will be like, I would just doing random talks, convincing them. I would support my conversation with others. So that would be more efficient rather than convincing.
Yeah, I appreciate that. That is 100% of what I wanted you to get out of this today was there's no convincing anyone. There's only providing them with data that supports the decision that they're about to make, regardless if it's the decision you want them to make. It's giving them the data that supports it and believing that that data will ultimately get them to where you want them to go if they're open to receiving. But we don't want to convince because that creates a buyer remorse, right? We want to provide them such great information that they become confident buyers and they make confident offers. A confident buyer will make a confident offer every single time.
And also, Bob, what you said about third-party validation, because it's not my opinion as a realtor or your opinion as a lender.
Mhm.
Like you said, it comes down to the numbers. When you can show them the facts of the numbers, then it's not me coming across as, well, I want your deal, or you as the one, it's
Yeah.
how can this best implement and how can it affect your goals, short-term and long-term? And the numbers will speak for themselves, but if you can provide that information, that is sometimes the third-party validation. It's not your client as one party and you as the other. That information, even if you can't get, Bob on the phone or your other lender, whoever it is on the phone, you pull up some data, sometimes that speaks more than you could actually speak to your client.
I agree, and I do, and I have charts that I have just saved on my phone, so I know the folder I know these are buyer charts. And so if I'm having a call with a buyer that's in this situation, I know I can just, when I'm talking to them, say, hey, you know what? So I just sent you a text. Check out that text, man. Look at the graph that I just showed you. Hey, look at that part. And look at this part. So it's a validation behind my audio that they're hearing part of that conversation. So yeah, it's third party for sure.
I feel like our goal is mainly to communicate with you, to say, it's not to sell them anything, it's just to say, educate them on, I hear you, I heard what you're saying, I know these are your, objections, your concerns, and you're not sure, but you know what, look, maybe, because everybody will give us a number, but what works for me is not gonna work for every other person, so I said, I'm not an expert on this, but I know very carefully, let him run those numbers, and he doesn't have to convince you, but it's just kind of creating that partnership with them, versus what you said, I'm just trying to sell it. Because you didn't pay, you might give them more buying power or less, or we check those whatever unique to them, I feel like your strength is.
I have a question about what percentage of people will actually be there?
Everybody that authentically wants the conversation, because for me, I can't pull up those charts. So me giving him a bunch of numbers that I don't know, that gives me no confidence and no validity as a realtor. Because why am I gonna go show somebody a $500,000 home when he only has buying power of 300? And you might say, well, and sometimes, in our conversations as we have with clients, they'll say, actually, I took $500 more on this. Actually, I co-signed, I forgot about that. Those are conversations that he is more the expert.
I understand what I'm trying to ask is about what you're talking about is pre-qualifying and talking about these numbers. What I'm trying to say here is that, as you rightly suggested, that we can save a folder with these charts, and if we can, while we are having that conversation, if we put all those numbers and share them, with them, that will have a better impact, and then probably we can, route it to not steer, route it to get.
Well, my clients who I've always given to Bob has always called him because I've set up the conversation saying, hey, this is not my area. That's like me as a plumber saying, hey, this is what the HVAC guy can do. No, this is not and I don't want to give him false numbers that are constantly changing. That's Bob's job, as far as I'm concerned. He's the expert on that. And I think then showing, hey, we have a relationship is what I typically try to do, because tomorrow when that changes, and I'm like, what does that mean? I don't want to be a middleman. I want him to be feeling, hey, we're all facilitating this person's success, and whatever that means. So that's my kind of approach, just because I don't like to ever say, this might cost you, even on an AC, $8,000. I don't know what that kind of is. So it's more just like, and I set them up, I give them a text, I'll give them a call, hey, this is my yada, 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 this is what their concerns are. You know, and so that way he has some kind of, and then I'll also, you know, copy them on the text as well, and a separate text, and say, hey, Bob is great, he has so many tricks up his sleeve with information that I don't know, you know? And that will give him, and we can make them, but guess what? We can make them call a qualified lender. That I think stops the process for anything else, because they're probably not gonna call him, they're not gonna call anybody. They're gonna listen to their father-in-law, mother-in-law's cousin's brother who told them that not to buy the house. Right. And I'm saying, and that's why I just feel like the genuineness of, you know, building that partnership, that you know Bob delivers. So, I mean, if you can't help them, he knows how to finagle it to, not finagle, just present that conversation to be professional and objective and show the numbers and say, hey, this is how it works.
I have a mic in the back, so I'm gonna get you to do a testimonial, so. Thank you.
She showered too many compliments for you.
Well, you know, like I said, there's a lot of you guys in here that we obviously know and work with and love dearly because you support us. But for those that don't know, I mean, it is. This is our family business, right? So we take this very seriously, and we have a brand that I elevate so high. I work to elevate so high that all it does, because I know each one of you holds your brand very high as well, that at the end of the day, you know, when you hand off that client, and the handoff is important. I notice they're smiling because we talk about this a lot. It's not, hey, how do you know if they call? You don't leave that up to chance. You make the connection. You validate that, hey, this is what I'm about to do, and I'm about to connect you with my strategic business partner, and I'm going to do that via text. And what's going to happen is I'm going to make an introduction to you with them, and then they're going to be able to immediately reply back with a time that they're available to have a conversation with you. And when that happens, 99% of the time, they respond with, yes, I'm available at 2 o'clock time. Because you've already set up. It's a hard thing. That's an important role. The handoff is so important in how you do it. Now, each of you are going to operate differently, right? Each of you will operate differently with your level of communication and how deep you want to get into the data and the numbers and all that kind of stuff. This is meant not to make you want to go out there and be the expert on all this data and all these numbers, but it's meant to give you some really strong talking points. Really strong talking points when they say, well, I'm going to wait for this. We all agree that we've heard of every single one of those 3 objections. Don't need you to be the expert in it, but I need you to be confident in the conversation, because that confidence is what's going to get them to the next phase, which is the conversation with me. Because that's the next part of all of this is, you know what? So, you know, you're right. That's absolutely right. I'm going to go ahead. Yeah, please connect me with Bob. And then we know we're just moving the football down the field, guys. We're just moving it down the field. And now we've gone to the 50-yard line, and now we're trying to get that next piece done. A couple of things I want to show you, just how we do this. This is all the graphs and charts without the funny emoji. This is me. So I become the emoji, but what it does is it shows them. So this is the data that we're giving them when we're making these presentations. So we're showing them what it's going to take to purchase a house, right? This is our presentation format. So this one happens to be a gentleman, Justin, and he's buying a house at $299,000. We're doing this one actually in Tennessee. He's purchasing $299,000. We're doing a conventional 1% down loan. Okay, so a conventional 1% down loan, and he was trying to decide, should I pay the rate at 7.125, or should I go to 6.5? Right? Those are questions people ask. Well, how do we tell? Oh yeah, go to 6.5, it's gonna be great, lower interest rate. Is it better? I don't know, let's look at the numbers. Right? So we show them, well, you know, what are you prepared for cash to close wise? Because a 7 and 8 is only gonna cost you $7,800 out of pocket to buy this $299,000 house, or the 6.5 is gonna be $11,000. Right? Well, you know what? I'm good. I have $12,000 to spend. I'm good with that. Okay, well, you can do it, but does this make the most sense, right? And so we look at it and say, okay, well, your monthly payment's going to be $120. That's important to the person, right? But what happens over, let's say, 5 years? You know, and depending on what they tell me, like how long you plan on keeping the house. Are we thinking about refinancing this home in the next 18 to 24 months? Like what, their responses is gonna dictate how quickly I'm changing that savings over 60 months to a savings over a certain number of months. Whether it's 18 months, it's 12 months, it's 5 years. But it's telling them, okay, yeah, you save $5,000 over 5 years, and then the interest savings, is gonna be $27,000, right? So it's showing them, okay, that decision is a good decision if you stay in this loan over that period of time. Or you said you're comfortable coming out with that money, so you come out of pocket with that delta in money, and then your net overall savings when you look at your new loan balance at the end of 5 years, factoring in what you had to pay to get that new loan balance, this is what your net savings is $5,500. And going through all that, he actually chose to go with version 2, and he took 6.5%. This guy, Brian, this one is this was a DSCR loan in Oklahoma. What that means is he's buying an investment property, and we're doing a DSCR, debt service coverage ratio loan, which is we're going to do an appraisal to see if the appraiser's rents that they provide on that property will cover the mortgage payment. This guy has zero income. Well, he's going to have income. Everybody's going to have income, right? He started this new company, and he's going to be making millions. But right now, he can't show any income because he has no tax returns, he doesn't have clients, but he's going to. So, all cool with that. He has a lot of cash and great credit, so we're like, okay, here's what we can do. We can pull together a DSCR loan, and we can look at it one of two ways. So, in Broken Bow, that's a lot of Airbnb, right? So, you might not, and I said, look, here's the option. If the appraiser comes back and says that we're good on long-term rental income, meaning the income will at least make the payment of $5,724.16, we're good to go. But if they come back and say, yeah, long-term rental income is going to be $3,000, we're going to have to pivot and go to short-term, which means there is no ratio. Because short-term is like, okay, you can make $30,000 or you can make no money, right? So it's really kind of a no ratio type loan. And so we're going to pivot between the two. We're going to go after the first one, and then the appraisal comes back, and then we'll pivot between one of the two. But we're showing, obviously, the buyer these types of decisions and what the impact has on making one or two of these decisions. Now, the reason why we looked at it over 24 months is, first and foremost, he has to get income. So his business is going to have to create enough income where he can qualify for this. And if that happens, what we talk about is, okay, what's the delta? If you had to, in the worst case position, take that short-term rental income at a 9.75 rate, which I know seems high, but you're fine with the 9.125, what's the delta that this decision is costing you? $7,400. He's like, oh yeah, that's no problem. So when you put it into, that's a big number, like an interest rate, you broke it down into what's the true cost of $7,400. It's like, okay, that's not a big number at all. So worst case, he's like, I'm in. Okay, plan would be for him to get enough income, we refinance, and then we take that from a 9.75 to a 5.5 or a 5 something on a 15-year investment loan, right? Where we're just going to flip it to a 15-year, pay that sucker off quickly. Now it really becomes cash flow for him. I think this one's yours. Yeah, this is. Okay, this is a client from a partner here in the room. This was a decision we were trying to make. Should he take his current rate at what we had him at on an FHA loan at 6.625 at that time? Should we take that current rate, or should we use, which was coming in now, new seller contributions? Should we use those seller contributions to do a 2-1 buyout? Right? What's the trade-off going to be in cost? Meaning, what's he going to come out of pocket with versus what the savings is going to be? So we had to really look at that. So we went through the numbers and we said, all right, if we do a 6.625, they're going to be a $3,200 payment. But if we do the 4.625, which is 4.625 the first year, 5.625 the second year, 6.625 the third and remaining years, your payment's going to start out at $2,800. Well, look at the out-of-pocket expense, $8,000 to $19,000. Okay, that's a different number, right? Okay. He saves the first year $430. Okay, that's his savings the first year, but then obviously you have the second year it's going to be a little bit less, and the third year it's going to match what his ultimately long-term rate would be. So we looked at this and we were like, okay, over 36 months, what is the true savings? Like, are you saving any money by doing this? And it shows that he would save, what is it? Yeah, $293. That's it. So basically, we're breaking. This decision is a break-even decision. So you have an out-of-pocket expense at $19,000, out-of-pocket expense at $8,000. And over 3 years, you break even. Which one do you choose? What,
Save the cash flows.
Keep the cash.
Yeah.
Okay. so that's what I saw. That's my recommendation. He chose the other. Okay? Which, you know what?
There's money.
It's his, no, it is. It's his money. It's his decision. My job is to present him what that decision was going to cost him.
Educate. Choices.
Right, Ray, you're making a decision, you have the knowledge. And he's like, look, I was prepared for $19K. I'm good with it. I had budgeted it, that's what I wanted to spend, it was going to be $19,000. What was more important to him, and this is where we think bigger and then really go small to the client, the $430 was the most important thing to that kid. And then he understood the next year, it may be like it's going to be $380 or whatever, $375, right? Because of the buy down, right? That was more important than the trade of cash in his world. And so, okay, that's great. Yeah, I mean, and that's perfectly fine. We're going to probably come back and refinance it anyway, depending on that second year note rate at 5.625. But that's how we play that.
About what was the seller concession?
The seller concession was 10K.
When you presented that scenario, wouldn't you also say that, hey, look, we reduce the price by 10K? Would that make sense?
It wouldn't have, no, because we ran that because the reducing the price by 10K wasn't going to generate the type of savings that doing a 2-1 buy down was going to give them over that period of time, right? So that's kind of the way it was.
We do three things exceptionally well. We educate, we communicate, and we execute. Okay, education, as I've said, is priority number one. We have to communicate to let people know how easy it is to buy a home, just to make sure that they're aware. Did they know that you could buy a house with little to no money out of pocket? Did they know that the average renter's net worth is 45 times that less of a homeowner? I mean, do they know these types of things? And a lot of them don't. They think they have to have 720 credit scores to buy a home. They think they need 20% to buy a house. They think they actually can't buy a home if they don't file tax returns. You can. I mean, there's a lot of different ways to put loans together, but they need to know what the options are so that we can help them down that path. And the communication piece, it's not just about understanding communication, it's about understanding how to proactively communicate. If we are truly the experts in our industry, then we need to be answering questions before people ask them. If you can't answer questions before they ask them, then all you're doing is reactive communication, right? So we work really hard at trying to find ways, processes, systems to use communication proactively to eliminate phone calls that are coming in to you guys, to us, so that we can stay more active on new business. New business, new business, new business. And the last thing is just do what you say you're gonna do, right? I mean, if you say you're gonna call it 2, call it 2. If you're gonna say you're gonna get this done by this date, then get it done by that date. And most of the time, even if you're going to fall a little short here, if you can't get it done by 2, we always say just revert back to the second pillar. Because if you revert back to the second pillar, you communicate to somebody that says, hey, I'm sorry, I said I was gonna get back to you at 2 o'clock. I'm gonna be tied up, it's gonna be 3 o'clock. They'll be like, oh, thanks for letting me know. But if you call them at 2:15 and say, I'm sorry, I missed the call at 2, it's gonna be 3 o'clock, they're gonna be pissed, right? I mean, so just proactively look at it, and it's understanding reactions and actions. Every action has a reaction, and then just control your action. Control the action, you control the client's reaction from that.